things are working well. Okay, it seems like the stream is back to normal now. Okay, so let's just pop into stream mode and get started here. So we're looking at the line work as we've left it here, and we're going to let's turn this down a little bit here. We're going to kind of start to get in on the line work on the tentacles and try and finish that off, and then we're going to maybe do some a little bit more breakage on the window, well, the glass panes, at least in here. So and then we're going to be able to continue with some of our value and then just get straight into some rendering, which should be fun. So let us start in there. Welcome, welcome. Okay. How's everybody doing today? Good, hopefully. Okay. So let's just turn some of these things off. We don't need them all in there. We did have this group reduced in its opacity, just so we could see some of the other line drawing underneath. We got our tentacle there so that we're able to see where it's going, and then we can get to drawing on top of it. Doing good, excellent. That's good to hear. Let's pick a different brush. So what I was doing with the kind of look development of this tentacle is kind of trying to make it an abomination. Again, we were running off of the idea of, or the inspiration of what we were looking at in Carrion. So just sort of this mishmash of, I don't know, sort of like visceral flesh with teeth and claws and spikes. Right, so we just want to kind of bring some of those things in there. If there's some eyeballs sticking off, why not, right? Those things will look pretty good. Some of that line work in there. Some of this stuff I would want to establish now. Some of the stuff I might kind of get into later, right? When I get into further rendering. Sometimes you'll run into situations with clients where you kind of your back is against the wall time-wise, and you don't have a ton of time to kind of set things up properly, and you may just have to go with it, right? So that can be the case for us. We kind of just want to get on with it, right? So we can start making other artworks in different streams. So next week I'll be away, and Eric will be taking the concept stream. So if you haven't familiarized with Eric, he does an illustration stream on Fridays. You can look to the schedule for that. But he'll be taking over for me while I'm away for this week, or next week. Eric has some great insight and great techniques, so it'll be interesting to maybe see some of the way he approaches these ideas. And I'll return to the regular scheduled time the following week. All right. Some teeth. I kind of want some teeth coming out of there. Get this down here. Those guys feel pretty good. I am going to go back to the sphere. Let's find where the sphere is. Sphere forward, there we go. And sphere forward. I just want to break that a little bit more right around here. I just want to see some more. Like, I feel like the regular break doesn't kind of show everything that I want to show, right? I want it to kind of look like those bars have been pried open. Maybe we get some more shatter across the glass. So let's back that up. And I'm just going to take these and I'm going to break them out. Nope, I haven't seen it. Looking forward to a vacation. Are you? Excellent. It's definitely something that is harder to do now with COVID. But yeah, it's sort of staycations are the thing, I guess, where people kind of just go and hang out in their local spaces. Kind of get this looking like it's broken. We get that pane of glass coming across, and I just want to kind of have it crunched in here so I can get some spidering cracks coming off of it. I want it to be more like plate glass. I mean, we might do something where it looks like safety glass, kind of spidering out that way. It'll be a lot of something that I fix in post, in rendering. Yeah. So let's pop those in there. Those are just lines. Okay, that's good. Get the sphere back. We put a lot of the breakage on the sphere back. That's fine. Let's kind of take a look at those things. The sphere forward is our cracking. So what we'll do is we'll just erase some of that sphere forward cracking. You don't want all of it in there. Actually, other than our crack, I think I'm just going to delete most of that because we have all the other lines laid out. And sphere back will be this line that we erase in here to get those things looking like they're damaged. Like so. Okay, let's take another look. Sphere forward. We'll just actually call this cracking. I'm actually just going to combine it down now. There we go. We'll just call this sphere now. All right. So that is our sphere. We got our little alien dude's head. I feel like he's going to just fade into the water a little bit more. I got this puddling of his flesh on top. I'll just kind of bring it down here a little bit more. I had his little gills sticking out in there. So with the sphere, we can come down to the bottom, and then we'll just erase what we see down there. Same with the water. Just gonna erase it. And cables, rings. We got our rings up here. I'm just going to go into the mask and kind of just blot some of that out so we get this guy just on a nice backdrop. Hello. Everybody's being very very polite. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, so how are we thinking about this? Cables. I'm just going to start kind of combining everything down, maybe. We will. Let's just kind of get some of these cables going away wherever we have overlap. So those things become a little bit more clear. Cable, cable. These guys up over top. Perfect. Go up to rings, get rid of these guys. Rings. Cables. Sphere. We'll drag water down into here as well. Give that a pass. And I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, some of the things that we have going on in the sphere, we can always later kind of get rid of and rasterize if we want. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that so far. So let's start adding value now, just to kind of get further with it. Eric will be working on his own design. So that'll be fun for you guys. Okay. Let's start a value layer. I am going to set this up with a fairly basic mid-tone to work with. I might actually darken that a lot more. And then we'll bring all the opacities back up in here. So at a stage like this, sometimes I'll just sketch with value, just to start kind of getting the vibe of the way things will look. That way I don't have to, it's not so final. If I screw up. So I'm thinking there's going to be some sort of weak light shining in pretty much this direction, right? We're drawing a kind of a 3D arrow. We're gonna get some, maybe some warning lights back here, giving us a nice rim on some of these, some like maybe red caution lights, maybe each side. And of course we're going to get our lights coming from the underside of the pool. I think that's where a large amount of the light's going to come from, so that'll be our strongest light. So we'll see how that goes, but this way I can kind of just blot this stuff in, start to look at what that might feel like. Right, this will be a bit brighter in here. The tentacle is going to be in the way of some of those lights, so we're not going to see some of that value coming through. The base of the sphere will probably be pretty dark, actually, just because I want the fluid inside to be a bit darker, and then it'll be lit up from sort of the bottom up. So we'll just kind of figure out how that is going to work. And if I'm sketching with this stuff, it's not super important that I stay within the lines or anything, because I'm not applying any sort of final lighting here. I'm just trying to get a vibe for the way things will look in there. maybe these reflected lights, these red ones over here, they're going to kind of give us a bit of a rim light on this guy, but also maybe reflecting off of this pane. This one might be reflected off of by a little bit. This one maybe for sure. And then these facets will probably get hit fairly strongly in there. Some weak light down on these guys. Get a little bit of light on Homeboy's face up here. Get a little bit more shadow kind of cast on the side of this guy in here. And then just go through and kind of set these things up. This will probably be a little less noticeable in terms of the surface in there changing. Okay, get some of that bright light. We'll just get a little hint of that kind of water in there being lit up a bit stronger. There maybe our little homeboy here is kind of just underneath the shadow of the edge of that thing, so some of these things will pop out, and then that way we can get some of that lighting up some of the liquid in behind his head, so we get a really nice kind of pop for contrast sake. Likewise over here, and then we can get a bit brighter light as that kind of sweeps down. Maybe it just starts to hit this area in here. Switch up our brush a little bit. I'm gonna grab this guy and put some transfer on him, just because I want to play a little bit more with some tapering instead of that specific stroke. It's kind of limiting. I don't want to use any super bright values yet. I can always kind of just, if I wanted to allude to some specular highlights, then I can use a brighter value. It doesn't have to be white in there. Get that underside lit up, because that's going to be from the pool underneath. So just trying to find any of the lines that we've made to create those volumes. rim on either side that's poking around the side that would see some of these lights? So any of the bright spec we're obviously going to see down below here. But up top, that weaker light may still be casting enough light to catch some of that as specularity, especially if his tentacles are kind of like wet, gooey, right? Then we can kind of go in and hit some of those areas. When I'm painting with the spec, I'm thinking about the surfaces as reflectors and thinking about how those surfaces might reflect light in there. Are there going to be any pressure bubbles in the tank or the fluid? I'm not sure how that pressure would work unless it's just sort of bubbles coming in, because there would be, it's not pressurized anymore, right? So it would just have to be some sort of gas leaking in. Have you used any of the XP pen displays? And if so, I have not. I've used exclusively Cintiq. And all of my Cintiqs are kind of older than these other displays since they've been more useful. I've heard good things. Pressure sensitivities may be an issue on some of them. I have read reviews on some of them where people have been a little bit disappointed in the build quality. But at the same time, I mean, if it works, it works. I mean, if it's cheaper, it's probably going to be something of a build quality that's not the same as a Cintiq. Do I think Cintiqs are worth the amount they charge? Well, yes and no. I mean, the touch displays, I've watched reviews on those as well, and people say it's not bad, but I watch them use it, and it looks frustrating for the price, right? It's extortionately more expensive for the touch, and it's just not there yet, in my opinion. It's nothing like the iPad, right? I know they're different tools, but it's just not to that point where I would be shelling out an extra. I think it's an extra like $1,200 for just the touch. I could be wrong, but it's high. So yeah, I mean, it's not something that I would use too much of at this point. Like, it'd be nice to like grab this and turn it with my hand, because I'm not a keyboard person. I don't like hotkeys on a keyboard, because then I have my arm kind of crunched back all the time, and then, you know, I used to do that and just would always get like headaches and sore shoulders and whatnot. So I kind of just opted to not do that anymore at a point, and so I use sort of what's on the tablet, and some of them have really, really nice abilities. In I think the new one has this remote that's magnetic that you can kind of program. In a lot of reviews, I also see that people are like, yeah, I couldn't get used to it. But it's just so different person to person when you're talking about things like Cintiqs and tablets, because everybody will work differently. I know some, like I have Velcro all over my Cintiqs, because what I would do is I'd take a small sort of mini keyboard, put some Velcro on the back, and I just stick it at the top, so all my hotkeys were up there instead. So yeah, it worked for a time, and you know, it's just I didn't keep up with it necessarily to this point. So, but it's not to say that I wouldn't go back to it, right? It's just not something I'm currently using. Okay, so we kind of got this vibe going on in here. I mean, if we were to put any sort of bubbles coming out of this, we can definitely do that in the value render. I'd probably opt for that to be something more something that would happen in the later stages, though. I'm just not feeling that yet. So it's feeling pretty good. I think even with that, I can go in. I'm going to create another layer with a airbrush. And I'm just going to kind of darken everything in now so that we can start popping the highlights. Or popping the values in the rest of the piece. Covering up a little bit of the work that we're done, but we're okay with that. Maybe we'll just put it underneath here. Closing it in. Let's get a proper black going on in the front there. I don't want to close it in so much that I can't see my lines though, right? It's on a separate layer. I can always lighten it up, but I feel like that would be okay to there. And it's already starting to, at this point, to come together, right? Like we're starting to see how these things will look, which is pretty cool. Some more shadow in on some of the piping. Be a bit diffused, so we're not going to get any sort of direct shadowing. Let's go back down to this and very subtle stroke on that, brush settings. I'm gonna put some transfer on that just so that we can subtly mix that in. And we'll get a little bit up to the top. We'll just kind of spread that around up there. I want that pane to be something that we read fairly easily. Hello, welcome, welcome. My week, my strong, yeah, no, my week's been pretty good so far. Yeah, can't complain. So yeah, I'm kind of digging what's happening here. I mean, some of the stuff down below needs a little bit of finesse, but not too worrisome. We'll be able to maybe push some more of the lighter value off these inside panes because they're tilted towards us such that they might reflect some of the lights in the water back there, right? So we can use that pane to be something where we're getting a bit of a brighter reflection, which helps pull all of that information out from the background, right? So kind of move around in that space, maybe grab some darker stuff in there. So the lights down below are going to also shine up into the base of these things, so we might start to see some more intense reflections coming off of these guys as well. Right, less strength coming off the top there, because that light, we're gonna maybe set it back a little bit more, so then that'll make sense that there's more intense lights happening down low. So we can just brighten some of these up. Let's use our mixer brush to kind of take some of these other things down a little bit. Bit aggressive, that's fine though, because we just wanted to kind of establish a base of lighting. I'm not going to sample all layers. That you could see that as I was doing that, I was kind of just pulling all the black from the line work around, which is not what I wanted. Just want to use some of that lighter value, so I had to make that change in there. Same with any of this. Just kind of get in there and mix that around. Lighter values in the bottom are probably going to be way sharper. But this weak diffuse light up top is it's going to be okay. Feels not too bad. We can decide what to do with the glass. Like, it might be that the glass has water dripping off of it. It has smears. It's cracked, right? All of these things. So that can be sort of what we look at this point. I'm going to get rid of how sharp that is. It's just too much. Almost a bit too dark. I'm gonna just raise this up a hair so I can see more of the stuff. I can always go back in there later and drop it back down, right? So let's go back into an airbrush. Get some of that. Fade that dirty water down. Some of those reflections are whatever. I mean, they're not my favorite. I am trying to get a bit of a reflection of this guy's head off the window there. That's why it's that sort of dark spot, because that paint would be reflecting back down into the water, right? So that's what I'm thinking in there. Sometimes though, I mean, artists will forego certain effects so that other effects can come through. I feel like I might want to do that here, just because I want to see my lights kind of lighting up the water within, right? So get a little bit of those rays coming up through and slowly kind of brightening that up. face huggers and aliens. Interesting. So somebody developed a, or I think some leather worker guy created a face hugger mask, COVID mask. It's pretty funny. I thought it looked pretty cool. I wouldn't wear it outside, to be honest. I don't know if it's that cool, but I like the idea at least. Let's get rid of some of these rings that still exist in there. I missed those first pass. See what this is looking like. We can go back to there and kind of just have this fade off either side. I might go into these guys as well and just give it a little bit of reflective metal vibe. Reminds you of the flood from Halo. Saw that the new Halo got delayed for COVID reasons, and absolutely not because people thought the graphics looked terrible. Yeah, that's pretty funny. I mean, it's not funny for them because it's obviously those people put a lot of work into the game, but it looked pretty bad. I mean, especially if that's the next gen title and you get games looking like The Last of Us on current gen. It was pretty shocking to me. Be like, really? You guys thought that looked good? I think there's a stylization to it, which is fine, but I think that you know, the internet is a fickle place, so you're bound to get people super obnoxious about how those things look, and sure enough, that was the case. We'll get some of the values back here. The graphics were amazing. Great memes. Yeah. Oof. Sort of like a car crash. Just couldn't look away of like all the people responding to it. But I mean, it's fair. You put it out and people respond. I mean, that happened to Sonic the Hedgehog, right? The movie, where people were like beside themselves with this. You thought this looked good, right? And they went back and kind of got rid of frightening Sonic. So we got all of our line work. We're going to move our tentacle down into the group of, well, we'll say this is our value group. And then we'll pull all of our line work up, and we'll put that all in a group and call that line. I'm inclined to turn all that off, collect all those lines the way they are, and then Control All, Control Shift Copy, Control Shift Paste, and that'll give me just a collapsed version of all the line. So I can turn this back on, and I can turn line layer off. Now we've just got it all set on one layer. right? Which is nice. And so, so we can kind of start painting in on top of that. Going a little bit fast here, but I think it's still good. Good pace for this. You know, like with this as well, I can always kind of drop the opacity and then just go in and paint with that in mind, and start to kind of get rid of the line work, so to speak. We're gonna leave it full for now. Well, other things that I've done when I've painted, it'd be like I collapse this into the value and start just painting with it all together. So that's super destructive and not great for if you make mistakes. Yeah, the Sonic character was frightening. It was sort of like weird amalgamation of human. It looked like the art direction was just like, let's try and make him look more human, right? And it didn't work out. Did not work out. Brute used to look menacing, but now they look like normal apes, which is probably why everyone just meme on it. Yeah. Sonic. I love Sonic. Sonic the Hedgehog. Especially the picture of the guy in the chair eating a hot dog dressed as Sonic. It's makes me laugh every time. Of the first Alien, no, I haven't. Maybe I have actually on YouTube. I think I've caught like a snippet of it. When Sigourney Weaver was super young. Okay. I wonder if we could just even get in here and make that darker still. The liquid at the top. And then have it kind of light up as at the bottom there. That way the speck at the top can really punch out. And then we can maybe lose a little bit of those struts in the back. So on top of this line layer, I might, well, actually, let's see if we can find it. Okay, so a lot of the damage came on this layer here, so let's turn the line layer back on. Actually, I'm just going to kind of paint that down a bit because it got away from us. A hint. Okay. Interesting thing is, like, once you start to paint more within the lines, if you get rid of your line work later on, you'll start to see that your creature's there, right? You can kind of have that be painted already just by painting within the lines. Yeah, I bet that was interesting. Feel for the artist that probably had to crunch time, dial up 11 just to Sonic to look like Sonic. Yeah, huge crunch time. Probably the studio. Well, no, I'm sure the studio got paid for it, but the way effects studios work is they tend to put tenders out on contracts and way sort of underestimate the time, right? They know they're doing it, but they want to get the contracts, right? Stay afloat. That's why a lot of them end up closing, is because it's a very expensive deal. It's very rough on the people that work in those industries sometimes if it's not managed well. So, food for thought, but depends on the studio. Sometimes it's a tad brutal. So I'm going to lock the line work in here, and I can actually go in and kind of paint it down so it's a little bit closer to the local value, just to get rid of some of the intensity of line, which is nice. Like I could grab something that's fairly light, for instance, on these top edges, and then just have those be catching the light. So all this broken glass is great because then it just turns into shatter. Same with this over here. That can all be shattered. At least for now. We can rough that in. That can be a crack. These cracks can be a bit lighter. Paint those struts down so we can't see them. We could get a little bit of light hitting them on the other side. That might pull them out of that darkness a bit better. Some of this is just very coarse of me to be doing right now, but I kind of want to just pull those things out a little bit more. I'm always gunning to try and make things clearer to read if I feel like they're going to be at risk of being lost. So that's why I might do that there. These center struts would be good to catch some of that light. Not side ones though. We'll leave those in shadow. That feels pretty good. I will lose these lights though. These guys down in here need to be barely visible because we're looking through a piece of glass, through some fluid, through another piece of glass, out the other side. So they're not going to be kind of these super clearly red elements, right? So that's why I would push them back. And then we can get some like glow happening in there later. Should have listened to the fans in the first place. I don't know. Whenever something gets made or taken from comic book land to or say video games to film, it's always this part of it's got to be that they want to try and marry the realistic look of obviously actors to a stylized thing, because you know Dr. Robotnik would look ludicrous if you just kind of translated his egg shape straight in, right? That's why Jim Carrey was him. So I think they just tried to amp everything up to realism, and it just didn't work that well. And there's, I mean, it's all of the choices come from pressure from organizations, right, that are paying everybody the money. So you'll get people that think they know in business suits telling you what you should be making, and it's obviously that's not going to work, or it's obvious that's not going to work. Can't talk today. But that's just it, right? Like, you don't, as the artist, even the art director, you don't always just get to make whatever you think is best. You have to impress upon the people who pay everybody to make the right thing, or make what you think is right in there. So like whenever you see somebody complaining about maybe, you know, the look development on certain games, whether, you know, there's too much sexualization or this or that, it's likely that the concept artist didn't just have free will with it and kind of did whatever they thought they should. They've probably been, you know, asked to do a very specific thing, which is whatever, that's the way it is. And you kind of have to do what you're told, or you won't get paid in some cases, right? So Food for thought. If you're thinking of going rogue. We'll get some of this water looking a little bit more. Bright. Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's a good way to get them to react with the facehugger thing. If they are not expecting it. Yeah, I think I saw them. Didn't it get stopped though? Because people were. Well, it's obvious why somebody would not maybe like that so much. So I'm just going to try and tag this edge along here. I'm grabbing a little bit of his face, but that's fine. I just want that to read. Nice. Some darkness on the bolt in there. So let's kind of take stock of why we're making some of these decisions again. So this light comes down in here and gives us some good light contrast off of the background, right? So we can see those things pop fairly easily. As we move down, the water provides a break in that space, gives us an opportunity to speak to the water and what that material looks like. And then down in the bottom, that provides some shadow, extra shadow in behind him to pop the silhouette. And then that sticks up out of the water. And then he's got a darker face. So it's really good to get something light against that to be able to pull it out, right? So that would be why I would do something like this. Just in case you're wondering what the heck is going on here. So I am going to commit these down into one value painting now, right? Going pretty fast once again, but I still think that we've got plenty of opportunity to make those changes still. So if things don't go the way we want, so thinking about that light source, we can maybe get into some of the damage here. Oops. I just wonder if we make that a bit darker, if that hole is going to be more profound. I think so. We'll leave it like that because I want the edge of the hole to read a little bit better. And maybe the darkness of the water won't let a lot of that light through. We're scheming the whole way through. We're scheming. Try and get this to work as best as possible. So let's get into some of the damage up in here. So sometimes what I'll do, we have the line layer on top here. So if I wanted to start kind of affecting that, I can, I can paint the lines, I can paint underneath. At some point I may just want to paint on top to kind of cover those things, and then I can, anything that's sticking out, I can kind of tweak underneath, right? So this can be my overpaint layer. Call it whatever you want. And then this is how I can come in here and start kind of tweaking things. Right, like I can come in here and finesse a piece of debris like so. Right, and that just looks a little bit better in there. I could be painterly with it if I wanted. It's up to you, sort of like the aesthetic finish that you want. but you know, sometimes I'll maybe mix a few different methods. Let's grab a brush with transfer. Pen pressure's on. Photoshop's not responding properly, so of course, window brushes. Get that back. There we go. Killer clown, yeah. Look at him scheming again. Yes. How are you? Good. Good. Thank you for asking. Thanks for the well wishes. I hope it goes well as well. Should be a good time. Okay, so I think I'm gonna work a little bit on the spidering sort of cracks in here, right? I want them to feel really cool. And when doing something like this, you really do want to vary the stroke pressure and get some of these lines not feeling like a Photoshop brush so much. So we want to kind of see some and see them disappear, right? As that kind of spidering sort of crack fades out in a direction. Looking at reference, of course. So I'm kind of painting back into some of these strokes to make it feel just a little bit more like glass that's actually shattered. I'll make those edges a little bit jagged right now, but if I start kind of painting too much of the background value, then I'd have to collapse it all. So I don't want to do that. I want to make it feel like it's, or leave it still manipulatable. Got the glasses on, yes, things are serious now. Laugh evilly, yes. I'm not going to evilly laugh. I'm going to start the evil genius sequel. Are you secretly an evil genius? Yes, I'm secretly an evil genius. You never knew it, but here I am. Apparently that's Bill Gates with COVID. 5G, I don't even know. I don't even know anymore. With the shenanigans going on. What people are thinking what's happening. Ridiculous. Some of these shapes I'm not loving. They're just too similar. Like there's a pattern here. It's a really rough, chaotic pattern, right? But it's just I'm not vibing on it. I'll leave it for now. It's something that maybe I'll collapse later and kind of work with. Go over to this side and start working with some of the cracking, spidering in there. Let's get rid of some of the intensity of these lines in here. We don't want them to be too intense because they're sticking out in the back. So I'll need to now go in and erase this line because it crossed over Homeboy. find any of the other ones in there. Not feeling too bad. Sometimes I'll take a break and just have a little bit of fun, seeing what maybe the end game might look like. A lot of what I like, if I have the opportunity to play with a piece, that's so much more fun than just having to squeak something out, because it's just like, if you do that too often, I mean, you're like a sewing machine in a factory, right? Just producing things and not necessarily loving what you're doing. So maybe we would get like a really bright light out of there. Is that too much? Maybe, right? Not committing to anything here. Maybe as they get closer to us, some of those lights will bloom a bit in there. That could look good. All right, so we could get crazy with it here and then just collapse everything and start painting on top. I kind of have half the mind to do that, just to kick it into high gear on this one. Let's go crazy. Jeez, it's gonna make a bus that it's gonna make a bus that has a bomb and it can't go below 50. I know, what a ludicrous storyline. It's like to get all of that stuff working properly, it's so Hollywood, such a Hollywood story. An evil person would probably just blow up a bus. Some random hippie 5G spreading the virus, man. Yeah, 5G. That's not how it works. I'd love to meet these people. It's like, that's not how these waves work, right? It's mind control. People have too much free time. I guarantee you, after World War II, people were busy trying to pick up the pieces and they weren't bored. So bored that they were coming up with this kind of stuff. But who knows? I didn't live in that era. I think we've just had it so good for so long. People are making things up as they go along. Who knows? Brandon, did you hear the rumors that they're going to try and make COVID vaccine mandatory in America? That if you want to go back to school and work in No, I didn't hear that. Interesting. Different ways of solving things. I'm uploading my work for my first week for tomorrow's Q&A with Brian. I am low-key nervous. I wouldn't be nervous. I mean, think of it this way: is when you're uploading your work, you want it to, if there's problems, that you want someone like Brian or whichever mentor you're working with to let you know what they are and how to fix them, right? If you showed up to every single class and you nailed it, then A, you probably shouldn't be in the class, right? Or B, you're not learning much. So it's great to have the images that where you've crashed and burned, so you can but you put the effort in, but so you can figure out where to go next and what to look out for next time, right? So I want to ask this: how do you paint light passing through glass while there's liquid? Well, I mean, if we're talking about the kind of lights that are being refracted through on the backside of this container, what I would say is light attenuate. I mean, you see this, we talk about this in the intro course. Light attenuates, right? So as it goes through a surface, it gets weaker. So I've got an example of something here, like a crystal, right? Hopefully, maybe get my face out of the camera, it will focus on this thing, potentially. Maybe not. Right. It's sort of doing it there. But what you're seeing in the back side of it is the light coming from my lamp and bouncing in through there. There's no way that light's going to be brighter as it comes through this piece of crystal than say bouncing off of my fingernails, right? Because it's going to attenuate coming through something like this, right? And so you don't want your light to be like super powerfully bright, because then it doesn't really make sense. And how did that light become boosted, I guess, right? It wouldn't. So it's going to come through. You're going to have to set up things where you're seeing the light like in contrast. So that's why I have a lot of dark in here. It would be like me turning on a flashlight in a dark room. You're going to see the flashlight. You're going to see all the effects. Turning on that flashlight in a brightly lit room, excuse me, you're not going to see much, right? And so you have to set up situations where it's going to work. But yeah, it's a consideration like that. So it's and don't be afraid of like brew some coffee or tea that's like black tea or something. I've got a coffee drink here, right? Let's take a look at it, see if I can turn on my cell phone light, and we can see maybe what that looks like coming through a darker liquid, right? So you can see where that light is, and you can see it sort of lighting up, but we're not actually seeing a picture of the light, which would look like that, right? We're seeing that it's just lighting up that liquid. It's brighter on the bottom, you get refraction. So this would be great material for me to look at for my alien, right? So this is really easy to get a hold of in terms of, you know, tools that you have, and that can sort of imbue your design, right? So yeah, don't be afraid of making maquettes or posing in a mirror or looking for things that are similar that you can produce. Like, so that was the coffee. We can see through my water bottle a little bit better. So let's say I don't want a situation where my alien is in clear water, but if I did, we would have something where that light is just way more brilliant, right? So food for thought, right? So it's I'll have some water while I'm at it, but hopefully it helps you out. So I want more of the coffee vibe. So it's going to be just brighter. I'm probably going to see a lot more saturation with highlight or with lighter value at the base, and then it can move off into, it can stay saturated, but maybe into the deeper, darker values, right? As it moves away from the light source, which in this case would come from down below. Yeah. So I'm willing to kind of turn that off. What am I gonna do here? So something that I might do, we talked about this briefly, like let's go crazy with it. If I were to say collapse all of this right now, I can do that. I would feel better about doing that now because I have all of those other layers, my line layers, separated. Right, I'm not collapsing everything down in my PSD so that I just have one layer, because then I can't go back. I have no other reference for the line work or the values, right? I've just got nothing. So that can be a bit problematic, right? If I don't love what I've done, and then I want to go back. So I can go back now, and so we might kind of just go for it here. It's a leap of faith. I wouldn't normally do this for a client necessarily, unless, you know, we were just creating some fun mood paintings and that kind of thing, because they'll give me feedback. We're not going to go through a feedback session with this with anybody, so we can go a little bit faster with painting by doing what I want to do with it in there. So the reason why I might strip the background out is that I can kind of paint in it and without kind of worrying about the contrast. I'd say let's just go with all of it. So control copy everything if Photoshop will allow me to. Oh, I'm on the opacity layer here. So we've got our full layer there, and we've got all of our workup layers down below, right? And so I might put everything in a folder that's just work in progress. and then I can just have that turned off. Now we're stuck with it. So I'm gonna leave my lights up there. I'll have to kind of paint them in and out. Now my background's kind of fixed. Whatever, we're gonna do it live. I should start doing that. Where are we going here? Just professional looking at. You shouldn't be nervous uploading work. It was the same way with Brandon. I'm still alive. Yes. Yeah, I mean, what can I know that? Still having a professional looking at your stuff is pretty scary if you're not used to it. Yeah, it can be. It can be, but you know, everybody's professional, so it's more of just like we want to help everybody get better, right? So. I should start doing that. I've yet to try to paint some scenes where light hits water. Done it with just normal sunlight hitting skin. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many things to practice, right? So we should always be practicing. And so yeah, like just painting light coming through different qualities of fluid is totally valid. I completely understand how you feel. I've been trying to let people again. Feel ya. All right. Kind of get some of this looking more like dense. Some of the sharper light coming off of them. Sometimes this work can be a little bit tedious, especially if you're doing prop work. I mean, if some people love it, some people not so much, right? So, I mean, to each their own, but if you spend the time in the beginning, it can be just, it can look so much better if you just kind of soldier through some of the more tedious aspects of kind of like setting up, you know, these individual struts, for instance, might be a little bit kind of tedious for a person, but once you get it finished, it's gonna look great, right? So. So that's set up pretty good, but I want still a rigid line from that tip to that tip. So then I can just come in here and do that. Nice and sharp there now. All right. We may want to kind of just clean up that line here down at the base. Get sort of an ambient occlusion going on. I can start kind of adding little details like scratches and nicks and gouges and whatnot even at this point, right? That might be something I want to come back in here and do. It's just make it look like they've had this thing down in the depths of wherever the science division for a long time. I have a tough time with rendering in general. I get kind of bored. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. It can be a little bit mindless at times, right? Where you're just trying to make thing look like like a form look proper. So yeah, at some points it can just be a little bit like, oh, okay, right? It's not my most favorite thing about concept art, but it's definitely one of the things we need to get good at, but just got to find a way of kind of pushing through it if it's not your vibe. Proportions, yeah, proportions. I mean, just what you can do to kind of make that a little bit easier is just spend time doing smaller pieces of proportion, like figure out what the shape of fingertips look like, all the fingertips, right? Is there a difference between your pinky finger and your index finger? There is, right? And what's the difference between your thumb? What does that look like all the way around? Just the tips of your fingers. Spend a whole bunch of time with that. You become kind of more in tune with what that should look like. Then you can move on to the rest of the hand. You can move on to the arm. You can move on to the torso, or just the face, or just the eye, right? Like, you can break these things down into smaller chunks all the time. To make it easier to digest, right? What a lot of people, I find, encounter is this sort of impatience. Like, I want to know how to do it in 2 weeks or in 6 months, right? I want to know how to do it all. Well, that's great, but you have to actually store it to memory, and that comes through repetition, right? So if you're just simply not doing enough repetition, then you're not going to remember things, right? And even then, you'll get professionals continuing to practice because if they don't use it, they lose it. So that can be another part of the problem if you're not continuing to keep it up. So, I mean, having patience is key with rendering, with practice, all of that stuff. And it's like I say, it's fine to say you don't enjoy it, right? But if it's a core part of the job, you absolutely have to find a way, to start enjoying it, because that can be detrimental for obvious reasons. Drawing like freaking Mozart. select. We'll grab this other corner. Move down here. Using this kind of rake-like brush to give it sort of this almost like brushed metal vibe. See how that feels. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. I want it to be a bit darker though. I feel like it's hit by more shadow from the top down. Feels not too bad. I've got the little bit underneath that's maybe a bit thick. Can always remedy that a bit later. That feels pretty good. It's gonna get a little bit, a tiny bit of shadow just at the base of that, just to kind of make sure it feels like it's set off the glass. That feels okay to me. Some darkness in here. So these things are just like slowly coming together, right? And I mean, I don't have to go back and do a lot of like tweaking at this point. It's coming together, right? So it's time spent. I mean, we've only been at this for like an hour and 20 minutes. So, and we're getting way closer to what we want to get to here. So I think that, you know, just proves that it's just time spent. The shatter might be a good place or something to drag back in. Let's grab this guy again. On this tentacle, the tentacle is pretty like hard to read. Again, some of that stuff back there. I know I will have shatter in this area, so I can kind of come back in here and have that just be something that's sticking up as a nice element of contrast. And then have that kind of just roll down that way. I think I actually might put some of that debris over his tentacle. So it looks like he's kind of like winding his way back up through the elements, or maybe he's slipping back down into the water. I'm gonna bounce around a little bit here. I think, you know, like this is just it. It's like that busy work is great. I'll get back to it. I want to kind of start establishing what some of the stuff down here will look like. So I'm gonna get some of these eyes sticking out a bit more, so that we can see the sort of sclera of these things. Any of the teeth would be a bit brighter. And at this point, I'm just going to paint over the line work because I'm painting flat, right? I don't have the line work to turn on or off. So now I just got to go and just follow some of those shapes, and then just basically we're drawing with paint instead of line work. That'll be an eyeball back there. I wanted him to have lots of little kind of eye buds coming out in there. His teeth, of course. I feel like he has his mouth closed, and so it's just going to be the gums hanging down and just lip coming off of that, which I think would be funny. Have some fun with it, you know? I am going to start kind of poking in some light here because this will be one of my main focal points. Get the reflection of the dome in his eye. And then we'll get some of that nice light down below. Catching off of those surfaces. And then he might have like a darker iris. Something like that. Some rim light going around the outside edge of that eye. Look at that happening on a lot of these glossy eyeballs. This guy back there, he might be facing some of those other lights in the back, right? This is where we can start with some of that foggy foggy light coming in through. This tile. Grab a little bit of a brighter value just to kind of edge in the look of that light. And I do want this thing to be sitting in the water. I feel like there's going to be more water kind of like starting to disrupt some of this in here. So what I might do is turn it on a scar or a blend. That is one of these. Whoops. I'll just go with a so I'm just going to use the mixing tool to kind of like pull some of this and distort it to make it look like that water is kind of wrapped around there. We can do that with a lot of this in here to make it look like that water is distorting lots of the stuff. You want to keep some of those things in their general spots. I didn't pay too much attention to the shape of them because I knew I was going to distort them. Right, so it's figuring out where those things would go and then just doing what I'm doing here is just distorting some of that stuff. I'm going to drag some of that light in here and then kind of cut it off and then just have it start to mesh, which can look pretty cool. Brandon, what was your biggest weakness in concept art when you first started? Was it lighting? My biggest weakness is that I didn't do iterations. And I see it almost with every student that comes through the door is a lack of understanding that there has to be iterations because your favorite idea, your first idea, is rarely the idea the client wants to go with, right? You have to provide them with a range so you can kind of tap into what they're thinking. Right? And you kind of match your aesthetic, your know-how, your service with what they want to produce. And that goes for art directors or clients alike, right? So, food for thought. Right. So we get some nice kind of blending on there. We'll get that water kind of pushing in through that space. Okay, so we can go grab our brush again. It's on airbrush. Let's continue on with some of the eyeball render. Eyeball and tooth. Kind of just blocking these guys out because I just want to get rid of that dark line. I can always hit them again with a pass where I've got some shadow going on. Make that an eye. I'll just kind of randomly populate them here and there. I can be painting at this stage, right, with whatever I want. So sometimes though, if say a client has signed off on something, then I'll leave it. But nobody's done that here. I can do whatever I want, which is nice. Some eyeballs down here, either side. When I was originally drawing this, I was kind of like slightly trying to produce a sense of face here and there, and then losing that and picking it up again, right? So just having fun with it. A few eyeballs up on here. For the most part. Get rid of some of the paint that kind of spilled over the side. Get in here and start kind of modeling a little bit of the light, as it was very rough, as I had previously kind of pushed it in there. Oh, we got some teeth down here I missed. How's the LinkedIn networking? I get hit up all the time by rando people. I don't really need to be networking at my current state on there, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, I've got connected to, I don't even know how many people now. LinkedIn is pretty good for networking. It has kind of tried to become a little bit of like a Facebook, and some people use it as that, where they're kind of putting opinion pieces on. I'd really stress that you guys don't do that. It's very unprofessional, and I'm surprised that some people don't get that. Save the Facebook stuff for Facebook, right? If people see on your LinkedIn page that you're being political or anything like that, you know, it can be a huge turnoff, because they may feel like you're going to be maybe engaging in that stuff at the workplace where it's not appropriate, right? So I would just say, you know, use your judgment. Save the opinion piece stuff for different spaces. We get a little bit of that light kissing off the top of this. Something completely different. Oh, I got the eyes. Very mini cooler, yeah. All right. So we're going to be wrapping this up in a couple minutes. But hopefully it makes sense of like sort of the way we're approaching this stuff in insofar as the method in which I'm painting. Like there's just so many ways to paint. I'll tailor it a lot to what the client wants. Sometimes when I am doing stuff like this and I just kind of want to have a little bit more fun, and then instead of being necessarily restricted, we can still talk about kind of principles of concept design and whatnot, but sometimes, you know, you just have to kind of break free of that in your own work. But you can still get the work done. It's just maybe you're not, because you know you're not going to have to go through iterative processes, then maybe you would do something like I'm doing here. If you know that you maybe want to show this in a PSD to somebody, then maybe you would go more to non-destructive in your editing so that you don't lose the opportunity to show them your PSD and it's not just one layer, right? But it certainly speeds things up for me. So he's coming together compared to what we had when we started. He's definitely looking pretty cool, if I do say so myself. This mixer brush just works so well with this effect, right? Because I can kind of create these little waveform patterns and then sweep back into them. Lose little bits of the meniscus against the skin, right? I kind of just finesse that in there. Have that kind of move around. Lose some of that darkness in underneath the surface of the water, and then just kind of pull stuff up over top. Feels pretty good, feels pretty good. We're gonna just get rid of that stuff in the back there. We don't need to see that one necessarily. We can maybe at the end, closer to the end, get in and finesse what that glow will look like. Let's just pull that across. Some of those things in there. Okay, well I think we're gonna leave it at that for today. But we get a good sense of where we were. Let's just kind of open up our line layer and seeing a little bit of what our value looked like in there as well, right? So sort of what that guy came from and what he is now, is by working with sort of lighting and design in your mind's eye of what you want it to look like in the future, right? And then kind of setting that up so it comes to fruition. But there we go, right? So I'd like to, we'll see how it goes. I'm on vacation next week, so I won't be here. Obviously, Eric will be in my place, so we'll have something a bit different there. But we might continue just to wrap it up in color as well for the last session of this in the coming weeks after that. But there you go, right? So you saw how I kind of went about it. And hopefully that helps you guys out in your own pieces, moving from that line layer to the value breakup. Okay. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. See you guys. Have a lovely weekend and week, and I will see you guys upon my return. Take care. We'll see you guys next time.